Good evening, everybody. Hi, I am Molly Moran, and I'm the owner of Table Wine. And tonight we are going to dig into what I'm calling green wine. So, wines that are made using a variety of different green practices. And we're going to talk through what those practices are, what they mean. We're going to get to taste examples of those things and chat through all of that stuff. So, welcome. If you are joining us live, we have a 2-question poll. As I usually do, I often start with a poll of the people who are joining live. It helps me kind of get a sense of kind of who's out there. So the questions are just about how often do you pay attention to the green practices, and of them, of those green practices, which is the most important to you. So it looks like some, but not all of those of you who are watching live have answered those questions. So please, it helps me. It's just really good for my knowledge for tonight's class, but then also generally speaking and for the store as well. And then there's also a question on the table if you're joining live to drop into the chat. What is your favorite sleeper hit restaurant in the Madison area that people don't necessarily know about, but they should? And there are definitely more of you watching than there are answers. So I'd like more suggestions, please, because I am tired of the same takeout that I get all the time. So thank you for those of you who have answered. I have never gotten food from Hot and Spicy. I drive past it all the time. And I feel like that's my next thing. I'm pretty excited about that. Ahan and Meat People are very solidly in our rotation. Personally, I don't know if you all know about Sabor de Puebla. It is right by East High on 4th Street. It's amazing. It's amazing. We just got dinner there tonight. So their mole negro is one of my favorite things. So, right? It's super delicious. It's great. So check that out. And if you're joining live, we're going to use the chat as we always do to ask questions, offer tasting notes and things like that. Tonight's class is going to be slightly less about like, what are we smelling and tasting? And we can definitely get into that if that's kind of where the conversation takes us. But this is really about how these wines are made. And I picked wines that are good examples of each of those things. So it might be a little less like, ooh, let's parse whether it's lime or lemon that we're smelling and just kind of like enjoy it. So with that said, if you have not already poured yourself some of the Sauvignon Blanc and you got wines from us at Table Wine, please do. If you're drinking along, but didn't get our wines, whatever sustainable wine you have, start there. Even if it's a red, just start there because that is where we will start in just a minute or two. So let's dig in. Oh, I realize I'm not sharing my screen. Hold on one second. Here we go. Okay. Now we are. Okay. So things that qualify. It's a kind of a tricky thing at Table Wine. If you don't know this already, we have all of our wines have pink tags, and then a while ago now we started doing blue tags behind the pink tags, blue tags for anything that fell into the bucket of green practices. And that is definitely a term that is used in the industry, but isn't necessarily stringent. So we use it to mean anyone who is any of these things that I have listed here. So basically people who are maybe just under the big bucket of being green, responsibly sourced, those kinds of phrases. The French have a term called lutte raisonnée, the reasonable fight, meaning they're not going to spray unless they have to spray. They're not going to use pesticides unless they have to. So that one's, not firm. And then there's the difference, and we'll get into this a little bit later, between practicing and certified, right? So they're sustainable, yes, but is it practicing sustainable or certified sustainable? Same with organic, same with biodynamic. And then there's our friend natural. So we will get to natural. That's where we're going to end this evening. So we'll save that for later. But all of these things kind of fall into this bucket. At Table Wine, we call them green practices. On our website, they're called green practices. Other wine shops might call them something different. But this is kind of generally what is thought of in the wine industry as all the things that could be part of this group. So we are going to start with sustainable. It looked from the poll like a fair number of you care about sustainability. So let's talk about what that means. And please do feel free to be drinking while I'm talking through all of this. So sustainability, I think, is familiar to folks at this point, but just so that you're kind of aware of the range that it covers, sustainability is practices that are ecologically sound, right? In some way, they're good for the environment, either not causing new harm or trying to undo old harm. And sometimes they can be economically or socially sound. So if you think about like a sustainable well, not to just like use the word to define itself, but the sustainable economy, right? Like you pay your employees a living wage. That's sustainability in a different way than dry farming is sustainable, right? Both of those things are sustainable. What you're sustaining is different. Often they are in conjunction with one another. Or, the living wage thing would be both economically sustainable, but also socially sustainable, right? So it's kind of, I don't want to say amorphous, but it can mean a lot of different things. There are a lot of third-party certifications for sustainability. And there are certain regions in the world, in the wine world, that do lean very heavily on these certifications. So the wine that we are all drinking from Table Wine is from Mendocino, California. That's one of the places. There's a lot in Northern California. Napa has its own special certification called Napa Green. Sonoma has its own. Oregon has its own. So there are a lot in the US, a lot in South Africa, Chile. So you kind of see it kind of more in New World places that are, for the most part, a little bit warmer and a little bit more affected by climate change in a very negative way. I think the whole wine world is affected by climate change. If you talk to a winemaker in the Loire Valley, they're going to tell you, like, I'm affected by climate change in a negative way. But if you talk to someone in California, they're like, we literally don't have water, right? We are dealing with wildfires all the time. So I think it's a slightly different term for different people. So these certifications can be used to talk about the vineyards, the winery, or both. So for example, you could have a certified sustainable winery where they are like recycling the water, the wastewater. They're using the leftover pumice from the grapes to perhaps feed livestock, something like that. Like that would be that. They would have solar panels. That would be sustainable in the winery. Whereas in the vineyard, it would be more about water consumption, protecting the soil, protecting wildlife, those kinds of things. So I bring all of this up to just say that sustainable, and it's like I said, a couple of you said that that's what's important to you. It can just mean a lot of things. So that's really why I bring it up. The food pairing suggestions are listed here are for this specific wine, right? Obviously, they're not listed for like all sustainable wine anywhere, but I know that in most of our classes, we talk about food and what goes with the wines. So I wanted to still include that information because, it's kind of part and parcel, but I will come back to this in just a second. I just wanted to show you guys. So Hush in Mendocino really, really, really prides themselves on sustainability. They have a very kind of charming, I'll call it charming, a charming website that looks like it was made in the early 90s and hasn't been updated since then. But boy, do they talk about their sustainability and the different practices that they have and how it depends on the vineyard and what's right for that vineyard and what they're doing. So just one example, I just wanted to show you kind of what are we even talking about. Something like erosion control is really important in Northern California. So you can mulch between the vines, or you can let sod grow or wildflowers grow and dig these big trenches so that the water doesn't pull away the soil quite so severely. So that's sustainability in a nutshell. There is practicing sustainability and certified sustainability. Of the 4 things we're going to talk about tonight, well, I guess of the 3 that can be certified, sustainable wines seem to be more certified more frequently than organic or biodynamic, because they're more region specific. They can be, they're a little bit narrower in their view, and they give you freedom to do things that like the organic and biodynamic don't. And it really is just about like, are you doing right by the environment? Are you doing right by the people who work for you? Those kinds of things. And that's what those certifications are about. So I think that is why you'll see those certifications more frequently. They're less demanding, and they don't necessarily preclude the winemakers from doing what they kind of have to do to make good tasting wine, if that makes sense. So now's the time where we should drink if you haven't been drinking already. With all of the wines, nope, not with all of the wines. With the first 3 wines, I'll say maybe. I don't think that because it's sustainable, it tastes different, right? I don't think that like you're going to taste this and be like, I can taste the sustainability in it. Which is kind of like, for me, all the more reason to buy sustainable. Like, why not? It's just as delicious as a different Mendocino Sauvignon Blanc. It doesn't cost you anymore. And oh, hey, by the way, they're doing all of this good work. They're fish friendly certified. So they're not damaging the waterways. Like, that's just, why not do it, right? Alexis is asking, if a winery considers itself sustainable, do they usually use estate-grown grapes or just trust the vineyards they buy from? It can be both. It really depends on what type of certification, like what specific sustainable certification they have. So, for example, in South Africa, I mean, 9 times out of 10, a wine that we would see here in the States from South Africa would have a little paper tag on the neck of the bottle. Next time you pick up a South African bottle, check it out. And it will say like green certified, I think is the wording there. It does not mean that it has to be estate grown fruit. But they are going to check on the vineyards where they are buying fruit from. So it depends. Like, maybe it's just trusting your neighbors. Maybe it's actually having to know that for sure. It all depends on the specific certification. So in the case of Hush, I believe they are all estate grown. But that doesn't necessarily have to be true. And we'll kind of come back to this idea of estate grown fruit, and whether you can trust the people that you're buying grapes from when we get to organic. So we'll come back to that again. How's that Sauv Blanc? Right? I'm very much enjoying this wine. What do y'all think? Crickets. Nothing? We're both really liking it. Absolutely something I would get again. Okay, great. I was like, guys, sorry. Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad to see some of you like it. Thank you. This feels like a good winter white. It is. I agree with you. And that's not necessarily true of most California most Sauv Blancs in general, right? California, I guess, would go a little weightier than most other places in the world, but I do feel like this has that nice weight to it. That feels nice. Yeah. Yeah. That's not quite as too acidic, right? It's a really nice wine. Um, I picked Hush. I mean, again, I could have picked a lot of different wineries, but I picked Hush because of how essential to their identity sustainability seems to be. There are a lot of wineries, particularly here in the US, that are certified sustainable. I'm not going to take that away from them, but they're also like really big mass brands, the kinds of wines that I don't sell at Table Wine, where they are certified sustainable. But then one of the things that we should talk about here, because all of the other types of wine are going to say what you can and cannot put in the wine. So one thing to keep in mind about sustainable wines, particularly if what it is they are just sustainably grown grapes, that's great. That is good. But that does not mean that they are not putting additives, chemicals, what have you, in the wine. So just kind of be aware of how, like, what specific sustainable certification the wine that you're buying has, and what does that actually mean. And you can easily find this information. I'm not trying to be obtuse. It's more like there are just so many organizations, and you could find a wine with so many different sustainability certifications that it's kind of like just think about it as it comes up, I guess I would say. Cynthia says, I'm making fish choucroute, and this is perfect with it. That sounds delicious. That sounds so good. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm glad that some of you enjoyed that wine. I do recommend that you check out Hush's very old school website when we're done. It's very sweet. Are there questions about sustainability? Things you guys are wondering? I was ambitious in picking 4 wines, and so I need to be faster than I usually am. Okay. Ready for number 2. Let's do it. So feel free to pour yourselves some of the Gruner Veltliner. And we are jumping around a little bit in terms of the wines themselves. I structured the class so that the information made the most sense and flowed so as well as it could. So just be ready for that fact. So biodynamic wines and biodynamic farming in general is taking a completely holistic view of growing something. In this case, vines, right? In this case, grapes. And it is having a ecosystem where the vines, the people, the actual like land itself, and the stars are all in alignment with each other. When I say the stars, I am being literal. That is what biodynamics is based in, where the lunar calendar is essential, and it very much determines when you should be picking, when you should be making the wine, frankly, even when you should be tasting. So that is biodynamics in a nutshell. It was created in the 1920s. It was actually created before organic was created. And now you can kind of think of it as organic plus. It's like even more stringent set of practices, but it's also more of a complete picture, right? It's not just about like, were those grapes not sprayed? It's like, how was the soil being fertilized, with natural compost? Are there wildflowers growing? Are the people who are here in harmony with the land? it gets a knock on it for being kind of hippy dippy. And I, to be honest, when I started table wine, I was kind of in that camp. And I am now very much in the camp of like, yeah, I want everything to kind of, I want the people making my wine to think of everything together in one complete picture. So, you know, I'm not going to knock it anymore. So there are 2 certifications available in the world for biodynamics. The most common one that you'll see, Mein Klang is the name of the winery. Mein Klang, it's not just the cow wine, is Demeter certified or Demeter certified. And that's the most common one that you will see. Getting biodynamic certification is very hard. It's very hard to maintain that certification because there are so many different things that a winery has to be doing correctly to have that certification. So, and it's relatively expensive, as all certifications are. They're relatively expensive, so it can be kind of a barrier for some people. So there are definitely wineries who are practicing biodynamic who are just never going to go to the trouble of getting certified, but are also part of this world. So yeah, again, it kind of refers to the whole like biosphere of the wine. I had a chance to speak with a winemaker at Mein Klang, and he was really truly describing like the whole farm atmosphere, right? It's not just about the grapes, but it's also not just about the cellar or in the tanks. It's about the whole kit and caboodle. It's everything in conjunction with one another. So, and I will show you because it's just so pretty. This is a picture of the Mein Klang vineyards. Biodiversity in the vineyard. Like this is what they want to see. They don't want to see just, you know, brown dirt and just their vines and nothing else, right? Like this is kind of to go to Alexis's question of like trusting who you're buying from. We'll see it even more with organic, but here is a nice example of like you can literally just look out into the vineyards and see it, right? There are butterflies. Guess what? Butterflies are not around. Ladybugs aren't around. Bees aren't buzzing around if there's pesticides sprayed on grapes, right? So it's pretty, you can actually tell more easily than you might think. So I just think I just think it's so pretty. So I will bring up the other slide to give you some food pairing ideas, but then please let's taste this wine and talk about this wine a little bit more. I love Gruner Veltliner. If you don't know this grape, it's really an Austrian, it's really grown almost primarily all in Austria. I love it because while it is really great with Germanic food, like sausages and things like that, it's also like phenomenal with Asian cuisine, particularly Thai food. So the hot and spicy Asian call out from earlier with Laotian dishes, I think it would be fantastic with that. So you want to make that happen. So the Mein Klangs, Heather and Tegan referred to this as the cow wine. The Mein Klangs, Mein Klang farm is a cow farm. It's also where the grapes are grown. It's also where grain is grown to make bread and things like that. But that is why they have the cows on the label. Cows play a pretty important role in biodynamics. Their dung is used for fertilizing. So Summer mentioned, we're surprised by the slight effervescence. I was too. It's been a little while since I've had this wine. And it really does dissipate, I think. But when you first pour it, it's kind of like, ooh, are those bubbles? But it's so bright and lively on the palate. And I think that one of the reasons that I picked this, I love their wines, first of all. And they are actually certified, whereas a lot of the biodynamic wineries that we carry aren't certified. So I thought, like, let's just go with the certification to make this as clean and clear as possible. Is like at the end of the day, this is just really good wine, right? It's just like really clean, well-made wine. That if you don't give a hoot about this stuff, I think you would just like this white, right? Like I think it would just be, and I don't mean to speak for y'all. You can weigh in the chat and tell me what you think of it. And it's cool if you don't like this wine, but for me, I just think like it's a very pure, you know, varietally correct wine. It tastes like what Gruner Veltliner is supposed to taste like. And so I just think that's pretty great. What are others thinking? How are you guys feeling about it? Biodynamic. Alexis asked, yay. Biodynamic is like a fruit day versus root day versus flower day versus leaf day, right? Yes. So part of that lunar calendar is that, according to biodynamics, every day falls into one of those 4 categories that Alexis has there: fruit, root, flower, and leaf. Meaning that certain days are better for planting, certain days are better for growing, certain days are better for enjoying the wine. Those are fruit days. So all of that. So if this is interesting to you, or you just kind of want to, I don't know, just play around with it, there is an app. I downloaded it so that I could show it to everybody. When wine, oh, now I'm going to get the name wrong. When Wine Tastes Best. And I was really sad because today, can you see that? Wait, let me get it so that there we go. There we go. Today is a leaf day, and that means it is not good for tasting wine. Yesterday was a flower day. So do I think that you should only taste wine on days that are flower and fruit days? No, I don't. I think that you could get into it. I've read a lot of articles that it's like, look, I've casually paid attention to this, and wine genuinely tastes better on fruit and flower days. Whites tend to taste better on on flower days, and reds taste better on fruit days. I have also tasted wines at the shop. And, like some wine professionals will bring it up, some won't, but we'll just kind of joke about it and be like, I don't know, maybe it's a root day. And then you'll look it up and be like, it really is a root day. And like none of these wines taste particularly bright or interesting. And like, there it is. So you can get into that. If you're so inclined. It's a no bones day. Exactly. It's exactly right. It's a no bones day. Heather and Tegan are saying they really like the balance of fruits and minerals. This wine is making me think of spring, which is much appreciated this week. Yes, I agree. We carry a lot of wines from Mein Klang, and I wanted to bring in something new from them, at least new to us. So this is new to table wine, but we carry a whole lot of other wines from them. So if you're interested in tasting more, learning more about biodynamics, they are the people to do it. What's the app? When Wine Drinks Well. Let me make sure I'm giving you that name right. When Wine Tastes Best. Let me put this in the chat. When Wine Tastes Best. And I think for me, one of the things that when I said, that I was kind of a doubter when I first started, and then I've kind of learned over time, the 2 things to kind of keep in mind is that biodynamics is just even more thoughtful organic. So like, that's not bad, right? Like that's great. They're not putting, they're not spraying the grapes. They're not putting anything in the wine. It's just clean, good for the environment farming and winemaking practices. So like, there's that part of it. And then there's also things like, I used to think like, okay, who cares about if you pick during the day or you pick at night? But if you pick at night under a full moon, the gravitational pull actually affects the ripeness of the grapes. So on a full moon night, the grapes will be riper than they would be on a new moon night. And as soon as you hear it, you're like, sure, high tide is higher on those nights, right? Like there's like nothing, I don't know. It just makes more sense when you stop and think about it and stop saying like, oh, it's just hippy dippy. Maybe you were never thinking that. I just want to throw that out there because I've heard it from a lot of people. So there we go. Alexa says that she's very, very briefly learned about it from the winery she drinks from, and it's pretty fascinating, at least. I agree. I think that it is really interesting, and you can learn more, pay attention more. I think there's just like nothing bad about thinking about the whole picture, you know? Um, and I haven't come across biodynamic wines where they're not tasting good, like that the wine isn't well made. So I'm kind of like, at this point, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm all for it. So. Other questions or thoughts about the Gruner? I really should not be drinking a Nixie in between wines, but alas, that is what I have instead of regular water. Okay. Yeah, are we good? Okay. So, one thing to say in conclusion about biodynamics is don't dismiss non-certified biodynamic wineries. And I'll say this again with organic, but particularly biodynamic, Demeter certification is really hard. So if you're shopping from us, or you see on our website that it's biodynamic, or you're shopping somewhere else and you see, some mention of biodynamics, and then you look at the wine and it doesn't say certified anywhere, don't think that they're trying to pull one over on you. Don't think any of that. Like, just like they very much are biodynamic. I haven't really come across somebody who's saying that they aren't actually. Just know that, like, that's most likely why. Certification's hard. And, the more that somebody is a farmer, the less inclined they are to do that kind of stuff and jump through those hoops. And I think that with these kinds of wines, these green practice wines, we're really talking about more farmer made wines than we are talking about winemaker, winery up on the hilltop with the fancy tasting room wines, right? We're talking about people who are just like really into growing grapes and making wine. So they might not be super into forms. So take that for what it's worth. And Summer saying that they learn so much from these classes and they miss in-person classes. I'll tease this. I am planning on bringing, so we have one in-person class next month that is a rescheduled one that was supposed to have happened in January that we pushed to February, and that for all, it seems like we're probably going to go ahead with that at this point. And then I will have some more in-person in March. I'm not going to go to full in-person. It's just not practical. And frankly, I enjoy these virtual classes as well. I think it's just like a different style. So we're going to keep doing both. But yes, I miss you too. Okay. If there aren't other questions about biodynamics, although, we could talk about it forever. I could go way into more depth in all of these subjects, but I just wanted to kind of give everybody a broad, high level picture of everything. So organic, feel free to pour yourselves some Montepulciano. So organic, like sustainable, I think is probably a more familiar term. It means that wines cannot be made with synthetic chemicals, additives, anything artificial cannot be added to the wine. Certification for organic is expensive. It's limiting. What I mean there is I've just hear it so many times from small producers in Europe who are like, I never spray. 99 out of 100 times, I never spray. And then, I had that one year where I had to spray something to save some of my grapes, to be able to make wine, to be able to pay my bills. So I can't be organic certified because, that one time 40 years ago when I sprayed. Or, I want to give myself the what's the word? Flexibility to be able to do something if I needed to be able to, or, if I needed to, right? So, Patty's saying that this is how Vitruvian Farms works, right? And that he also doesn't like forms. I think it's super true. And I know that for us as the consumers, we're like, but I want to know. I want to see it. I want the word on the label and I want to know. But depending on how old you are, you may or may not remember that like organic was for a while this word that anybody could put on their food labels. And so ConAgra could you could say something that was made with those product or that, I'll call it a, product, could say organic on it. And so, yes, they are more stringent. It is actually for our benefit, but it's a barrier. It really is it's a total roadblock. One like super, super, super important distinction. There is a difference between organic wine and wine made from organic grapes. So you'll see that our Montepulciano friend here is what it says on the label is that it is made with organic grapes. That means the grapes are certified organic. The wine is not certified organic. Why do I mention that? Because if a wine is certified organic, that means it can only have the sulfites that are naturally occurring in the grapes in that wine. The winemaker cannot add any sulfites of any kind during winemaking or at bottling. So what that can lead to is some not really great wine. It can lead, sulfites are a preservative and they help keep bacteria away. And we'll talk about sulfites even more when we get to natural wine. But so a certified organic wine could not have any sulfites. And so that was where, when the organic certification first came about, that's what a lot of wineries did. Those wines really didn't sell. They really did all taste the same. And they all tasted bleh. Like they just were these boring AF wines that didn't taste like anything. And so now you're seeing many, many more wineries do the wine made from organic grapes, so that they could maybe add a little sulfite to keep the wine smelling fresh. So again, I could have picked a lot of different organic wines. I picked this one because I feel like it's so good with all like the kinds of things that we are eating now. In addition to the things I have listed there, like bolognese or ribs, it's really good with beef stew, that kind of stuff. So I just, wanted to include it because it's like the perfect January wine. I was talking earlier, Alexis kind of asked about trusting people. And here, I'll show you this and then I'll talk you through what you're seeing on the screen. So this is and I'm glad to see that so many of you are saying that's so drinkable and delicious. I'm really glad. So these pictures are from a winery in Monterrey, Spain that I went and visited called Fraga de Corvo. We carry a Godello from them. This is a very great case of not certified organic. So here we are on this mountaintop in Monterrey, Spain, and we're talking about organic, right? And their vineyards are on the left, and you can see the wildflowers, right? And you can see the soil, and you can kind of see like this is early, this is very early. This was in April, so there's not like a lot of vines growing, but. And then they were like, oh, and those are our neighbors right there who spray. You can see that they spray, and you can just like look at their vines. There's nothing growing. Their soil looked like parched and like dusty because it just had no life in it at all, right? And so this is a case of like, yeah, when people say, how can you trust that someone's organic if they're not certified? Like, yeah, okay, I understand that we can't all go out into the vineyards, but you can if you are given the opportunity, right? How could a winemaker know that the person that they're buying grapes from is actually organic? Because you can literally see the difference, right? You can just look there and see the difference between those two things. So I just think that's, I don't know, I love that side by side and thinking about that. Everybody is loving this wine, and jiving on it. So that's great. I'm very glad because I really like this wine. And I think it's a great example of organic wine that is not what organic was early 2000s, around that time period when they were just all so meh, and they'd get stuck on a bottom shelf at a store and collect dust, and no one really wanted to drink them. Oh, and Alexis, I'm glad that seeing the photo side by side is helpful. I just loved it. I mean, I loved like standing there, like I just like stood and it was like them, us, right? And like taking the different pictures. It was really kind of amazing. So I was surprised in the poll to see that nobody, for those of you who do buy based on green practices, that organic is not the thing that is driving you. And that's, that could just be this group of people. That could just be a sign of the times, whatever. But I do find that interesting, a little bit surprising. Questions, thoughts about organic? You don't see certified organic as much as you would have thought of, or as much as you would think. There's practicing organic all over the world, all over, everywhere. So a lot of good winemakers are using organically grown grapes. They just aren't caring about that stuff. Alexa said that organic is something that she would avoid unless she knows the winemaker, because I feel like it's such a buzzword. It's true. It's true. And Patty's saying it's like non-GMO doesn't always mean anything on the label. It's so true. Right? It's interesting that you say that organic feels like a buzzword, because to put it on the label, that is not just a buzzword. Like, that is work. That is in some way keeping chemicals out of your wine. So of the four, I mean, natural is its own special buzzword, and we'll get there in a hot second. But like, of all of them, I feel like sustainable is the most buzzwordy, because Kendall Jackson is sustainable. Because, so many major corporations are sustainably certified. And I'm kind of like, okay, but what the hell are you putting in the wine? Take that for what it's worth. I wasn't going to name names, and then I just said KJ because I just had to, because I got mad when I was doing research for class. Maybe you avoid both. Maybe. Kristen is saying we know that now, but I don't feel like the info about what is required to actually be organic is out there completely. I totally get that, for sure. And I do think that, like, for such a long time, it was just bandied about, and there is, for me, I was saying with biodynamic, when I come across a winery that says that they're practicing biodynamic, I have not found that to be untrue ever. I do question the practicing organic, right? Because then they say like, but we do this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, those things aren't organic. So the practicing organic, I think, could be cashing in on that buzzword a little bit. Okay. Questions or thoughts about organic before we leave it? Okay. I'm going to share an anecdote with you, an analogy that I came across earlier this week by a Psalm whose name is escaping me right now, but I think it's a really interesting and helpful way to think about these different things, and leads us to our last wine. So he was asked, like, can you explain all the differences between organic and biodynamic and natural, right? And so his analogy was, if you go to Whole Foods, and this was a while ago, but this was pre-Amazon Whole Foods, but let's just say Whole Foods, but maybe we'll say the co-op. Okay. You go to the co-op and you buy a roasted chicken there, and you feel pretty safe that, like, it was ethically raised, and, there isn't random stuff in the chicken, and you feel okay about it, and the chicken tastes good. That's the equivalent of organic wine. Then you go to your local butcher. Let's use our friend Pip at Meat People. So you go to Meat People, and Pip tells you about the farmer that he knows, and he raised these chickens, and here's what they ate, and here's their environment, and all this stuff. And he can get, the people at that local butcher shop can really like talk you through everything, and that like everything that went into this chicken was in sound. So that is the equivalent of biodynamic wine. And then you yourself go out to the farm and you get a chicken and you bring it home and you pluck it and you grill it up. And if you're a really great chef, it's amazing. It's amazing chicken. If you don't know what you're doing, you give everybody salmonella and you've poisoned all of your people and it tastes terrible. That is natural wine. And I love that analogy because basically the idea here is that like natural wine, when in the right hands, is amazing. And it's everything you could ever want because, the winemaker is like, there's no hiding, there's no chemicals, there's nothing but just the pure fruit. But in the wrong hands, in a dirty winery, there's some bacteria that grows, and then suddenly your wine tastes like sour beer, and everyone's trying to pass it off as delicious because, it's cool. So take that analogy, run with it if you like, ignore it if you don't. If it's not useful to you, don't worry about it. So let's talk about natural. So the idea with natural, people give it a knock on it because they say like it's wishy-washy and it's amorphous and there aren't strict definitions, and that's pretty true. But in a lot of conversations I've been having lately about natural wine with people who are more in the natural wine part of the wine industry, that's like, it's kind of becoming less and less true that there aren't guidelines because everybody more or less is on the same page. So the grapes are grown at least organically, if not biodynamically. They're harvested by hand, no machines. The yeast is native, meaning it's the yeast that is on the grape skins themselves. It's indigenous. It's not commercial yeast that's added. And then there is very, very, very minimal sulfites. There might be zero sulfites added, but there could be some sulfites added, either during winemaking or at bottling. That's the gist of natural wine. There is no certification. You're not going to see the word natural on wine labels, at least at this point. But there aren't checks and balances. So because it's organic plus grapes, right, you might see a check and balance for the organic or biodynamic part of that puzzle, but you're not necessarily going to like see any certification that says like, oh, this was made using only indigenous yeast. So how can you know which wines are natural and which wines aren't? It's pretty hard right now. I'm hoping that we're in the stage with natural wine where we were with organic wine, where it's a little tricky right now, and we're going to figure this out and we're going to make it easier for consumers. In the interim, there are importers who import only natural wines or primarily natural wines, and so you can start to get to know those importers. More than kind of anything else, I'd say drinking an importer's portfolio, if you care about natural, is the way to go. It's how you're going to have success without having to do a bajillion research projects about this stuff. Oh, sorry. Don't pay attention to that. That shouldn't have been there. That's all good. So the wine that you have is imported from one of those importers that I mentioned, Jenny and Francois. And it's pretty natural. So let me know what you think. From a standpoint of like full body or light body to full body, this should have come before the Montepulciano, but it's very different and kind of needed its own little time to talk about it. So I'm pouring it last. But I think you'll notice right away, it does smell a little bit different than, well, definitely than our other three wines. It's not as just like, hi, I'm fruit. Funky and fruity. I don't think it's a bit barnyard, not mad about it. I think it's not, for me personally, it's not over the line. There are wines that taste dirty. There are wines that taste bad. This to me tastes purposeful. It tastes wild, right? It tastes a little tangy. Right? I think it smells like tangy fruit. Just earlier today, I tasted a wine that was far too natty for my taste. And I smelled it and I was like, it just smells like armpits. Like I was like, it just smells bad. And on the palate, it tasted fine, but I was just kind of like, this is just not my jam. Whereas something like the Cousin Oscar, they intend for this wine to be served actually with a slight chill on it. And that it's quite drinkable, like that. And so, that little bit of earthiness that some of you are saying barnyard. I have to say, like, I don't really get barnyard because I've tasted wines that literally smell like dung. And so I won't personally go with barnyard, but you guys are living in barnyard land and that is just fine with me. But I'm somewhere where there are mushrooms and earth. Alexis, you're so good. Oh my goodness. So Alexis said, do we know what grapes are in this? I get a bit of smoke, which reminds me of the Cinsault because that's the only wine I've had with true smoke smell. Well, this is Cinsault with a little bit of Pinot Noir. So you know what you're talking about. Yay for you. Yeah, the smokiness is definitely Cinsault. That's it. That's what that grape tastes like. Patty said damp old books, mushy leaves at the end of fall. Yeah, like I was thinking of I didn't want to say rotting mushrooms, but yes, I agree with you. Where it's not the crunchy leaves, right? It's like the underground or the under layer of leaves. Yeah. Alexa's saying that she's Ireland in November. Oh, sounds lovely, Patty. I mean, I guess it's also Pittsburgh in November, right? Actively avoided Cinsault since the last one. This has come back. That's great. And that could be that little bit of Pinot Noir. And one thing that I will say that is kind of new to my knowledge of natural wine, for the longest time for me, when thinking about natural wine, I would get really caught up in the savory stuff, right? The smoke and the barnyard and the mushrooms and the leaves and earth and all that stuff. And that's true and that's there. But then what I'm kind of seeing and learning is that often with a natural wine, there's also the idea behind it is a purity of fruit, right? Where you actually get to taste the grape because they're not they're not going for super ripe styles, right? You're not going to come across a natural wine that's like 15.5% alcohol. Like they're going for kind of a cleaner style. But you can really start to taste the grapes themselves and come across some very fruity natural wines, which is exactly that's what I love. Like that's what I'm super into. I think that's beguiling for sure. And one interesting thing of note when it comes to natural wine, Meinklang, our friends in Austria with the cow, is that they're also a natural winemaker. So they are certified biodynamic, but they are also natural. So they do all of the things that natural wineries do. So they are both. Domaine Rimbert, who makes the Cousin Oscar, practicing organic, and then also a natural winemaker. Whereas our friends at Yashi, they're not going to say that they are natural in any way. That's not what they're doing. They're focused on organic. They're focused on getting you wine at a nice price. And then our friends at Hush also. Not that either Yashi or Hush are doing like manipulation or like going out of their way to add crazy shit to the wine, but just that's not what their focus is. So it can be, you can find natural wine everywhere, right? Alexa said she loves when wines remind you of specific things like that, Patty, like Ireland in November. I agree. That's what's nice about wine, right? That's what's interesting about it all. Other thoughts on this natural wine? Are there folks out there who have not had any natural wines or haven't knowingly had natural wine? I'm curious to kind of see what the reaction is to the first one. I remember my first natural wine. That's why I'm asking. Kristen says this is pushing the line for her, but Patty loves it. Agree that a chill would be nice and we'll throw in the fridge and have with dinner in the coming days. And I would say have it with some meat or some mushrooms. It's really good with kind of hearty stuff like that. Weirdly, the traditional pairing with Cinsault is escargot. We can't really find escargot to serve ourselves at home, I don't think. And I've never had it before, but I've been reading that like it's a traditional pairing, but it's not a great pairing. I was like, okay, good to know. I can't really imagine this with butter and herbs. That's like not where I want to go with this. I want to go to cured meat or roasted meat of some kind. So I think this is my favorite natural wine I've had, but I'll be honest, I haven't had many. I think that, well, what did you think about the Mind Clang, Alexis? Because that is also natural. Summer says we don't love Oscar, but we'll give the bottle to our friend who likes to travel to Ireland, Patty. I think that's hilarious. We'll see how that goes. Here are things that I will say. If you are given this bottle and you're like, no, thank you, or like now you have an open bottle, you can decant it, aerate it a bit, and that will kind of like blow off some of that funk, for lack of a better word. Definitely chilling it is going to bring out the fruit more, and the savoriness will die down a little bit, having a food if you're not already having food. So there are ways to kind of like save yourself. And it's totally 100% okay if you don't like this wine. That is all right too. Alexa said she liked this one more, but had a Mind Clang in a previous class that you didn't love as much. That's totally fair. And is Testalonga natural? I liked that. Yeah, Testalonga is super natty, and I'm curious which wine you had from them because their wines are natty. They taste like natural wines. I've had wines from them that I'm just like, no thanks. The orange wine I had, yeah. It's still not my bag. It's funny that that's the one you liked, but yes, and yes, it is. Heather and Tegan are saying this wine is so fruit forward to the both of us, and now you're wondering if it's because we keep our house so cold in the winter. Maybe. I really would recommend everybody kind of trying it out. Stick it in your fridge for a half an hour or so and see what you think later, because the idea with this wine is that it's very fresh and fruity. So, okay, that was like a whirlwind, a farming practice overview, certification overview, all that stuff. Are there lingering questions, things that you wanted to get covered that didn't? I really loved all of them. Same with the last class, 7 for 7. Good. 2022 is, I'm off to a good start. We all know that the next class is going to be great because I'm going to talk about Merlot, and I love Merlot. So it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be really wonderful. Oh, yay. I'm glad, guys. I got really excited as I was prepping for this class today. I just feel like we get these questions a lot, and the difference between them, and then also getting to see that for the most part, these practices don't really change how the wine tastes, right? Natural is its own thing. I always notice it on your invoice. Yeah, I did pick 4. I'm sorry, but we needed it. Oh, Heather and Tegan, I'm so glad this was the first one you've been able to join live in a while. I'm glad. Thank you all very much. I will see you for Merlot in a little while, a couple weeks. I think it's like February 10th. And I will plug this. If you don't already know, I have a podcast called the Table Wine Podcast, and my co-host Andy and Andy, who used to work for me, we are working on season 2, and we are looking for people to we're looking for your voices in lots of different ways. So we are looking for people. We're looking for questions from people, comments, stories, things like that from people. But we're also looking to have people come to Table Wine and drink together and be recorded. So if that's of interest to you guys, feel free to drop me an email and I'll give you more details as they come up. But that is something that's on the horizon. So I feel like you're class people. You're comfortable talking about what you think. You can just say stuff. Will I email the slides at all? I don't email the slides out. I'm glad you loved it. If you really want this information, I can pass it on to you, Summer. Feel free to email me and let me know. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much. It was wonderful to chat with all of you. I hope that this was helpful. Look for those blue tags the next time you're at Table Wine. Good night, everyone.